Bureau. They both have a wealth of experience in being productive and being really efficient with their time, and that's exactly what their business is about. Their time so that they're not wasting their time. And as we know, being parents, or even if you're not a parent, it's just there's not enough hours in the day. So I'll give the floor to Annie now to take us through their present. Any questions? Just you can. I don't know if you want to leave it till the end or questions as we go
Yeah,
along. It's about.
yeah, we'll leave questions to the end. Yeah.
Okay, the
Mhm.
floor is yours.
Okay, one
Start
quick
with the
housekeeping
question.
thing before I start. I just want to mention before we get going, I'm in an office where the lights are on a
Yes.
timer, and there's nothing I can do about it. So if I at some point get plunged into darkness, it's not because I've disappeared. I'm just going to have to go and do a walk and then come back.
That's hilarious.
So yeah. Anyway, as you were.
That's absolutely fine. No worries.
All right, so shall we just probably best to introduce ourselves first? So I'm Penny, and
Yes.
I'm one of the two ladies who are the Productivity Bureau. I've got about after about 8 years of experience working in advertising in various support roles like traffic management and project management. 2 years ago, I set up working for myself as a productivity coach, and yeah, that has turned into what we now call the Productivity Bureau.
Okay, and so I'm Emily. For the last few years, I've been working as a virtual assistant through a business that I call PA Me. Before that, I've had probably over a decade, I think, of experience working as a sort of a PA, an executive assistant, office manager, operations manager. I've worked in the public sector and in the private sector. I've worked in big organisations and really, really little teams. These days, as a virtual assistant, I specialise in working with small businesses who are kind of struggling with some of their kind of day-to-day operations. So as a virtual assistant, I kind of roll up my sleeves and get stuck in, but just as importantly, I also help them develop systems that they need to sort of grow sustainably. And so with that, obviously, when I met Penny, we joined up to deliver this combination of personal coaching and this kind of practical support in one package through the Productivity Bureau.
Yeah, thank you. So let's kick off. So let's first ask the question. Well, we've entitled this talk "The Productivity Myth." So, what is a myth? I think, well, we know this really in our heart of hearts that the myth is that productivity is actually doing more in less time. When we get to 6 o'clock on a working day, we look back at our day and we think, well, we have done a lot, but actually it's not really felt like we've achieved much. So it's not always that doing equates to achieving. So really this whole session is going to be mostly about talking about how do we achieve more, not just do more with our time. And for me, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that thinking shift, so that affects our planning and our prioritizing. And then Emily's going to spend a bit of time looking at the practical methods for how to implement those changes. So yeah, we've all been there. We've all started with a little thought, a dream of what we wanted to do in our business. And I mean, we've got Aina on the line, who's starting her own photo and video production company. Obviously, we both had dreams when we started, and Dahlia has this amazing business that she's setting up through Entrepreneursary and also going on to Blooms. And it all started with a dream, but actually moving from a dream to a reality, moving from the dream to the business functioning is, a whole different thing. And often the reaction when people get from dream, moving from dream to functioning business, you could be two camps of people or like two extremes that people fall into. So say you're the kind of person who is a real planner. So you're planning and planning and planning, but actually often that means that you don't act, you don't do. And then the other extreme is the instinctive person who's like, I've got this dream, let's do it. And 6 months, 12 months down the line, they're the ones who are floundering because their business is crazy busy. And everyone's different, we can all be on that spectrum, from someone who's who's never starting to someone who's just get down to it and do it. And that's why I'm doing my one-to-one coaching with people. I love doing things face-to-face because each personality has a different approach to starting a business. Bye, dark Emily. So that's what I really enjoy about the one-to-one coaching, because I can really get an idea of people's personality and the way they approach business. But in this talk, I think we're going to focus mostly on the people in the second camp, so the kind of just get on with it, instinctive guys and ladies, because that's really how those are the people where I want to be telling them, let's move from the steps to getting to the dream to the functioning business and shift from that thinking of do to actually achieving more. Because actually, when we are a kind of get on with it kind of person and just get on with it, it can mean we can end up being kind of life's bitch in some ways. Like we're just constantly being pulled in the direction of a crisis, because that is what the most immediate thing is. So let's start from the beginning. So what are these tips to be moving from just a do reactionary way of working to thinking about how much you're achieving on a day-to-day basis? So you probably got already quite far down the line with your business, and it could be quite hard to hear this advice, but my first piece of advice is that you need to stop. You need to just stop. And that can be quite hard, maybe for a day, maybe more. And when I say stop, I just mean stop, like literally no communication, like walk away from your phone, your email, everything. Because it's not until you're in that moment where you're paused that you can really start to take on some of these larger issues that are in the background of your business, not the do all the time. And then the second thing is write down your dream. Why? For some, this will come easier than others. Like it equates to your belief in what inspires you in your business. This, I would say, is called self-leadership. So it's like the difference between teaching a dog and to use a leash well, and teaching a dog to obey, and a dog that you have to constantly have on a leash because he doesn't obey. So this is what I would always call self-leadership. It's like, so that you're not being, like I said before, swept around by the world's issues and like the crises. It's anchoring yourself in the why of what you're doing. And then thirdly, I would say you need to be breaking down that like big dream into your tasks and your goals, your tactics. And this is more like what I would call self-management. So there's a bit of a difference. I mean, they often end up feeling like they're interchangeable, these words, management and leadership. But there's a big difference between being a leader of yourself and like disciplining yourself and managing yourself. So this is like the cogs that are turning in your day-to-day, like everything, how it goes, the tiny details. And I mean, there's whole management course dedicated to this. But in a kind of broad scheme, this is the tactics and the goals that you set for yourself. So I can kind of put this into an example. So say your dream was, or my dream was, to end world poverty. It's a big goal, but we're going to focus on this one and try and break it down. So I've done my research. I know the areas that are poorest, the best ways to improve their situation. There's so much data to prove that the handouts don't work, but the education and empowerment are key. And so I'm, only one person, so I need to set myself realistic goals. So, like, the first thing I do is I choose the poorest area in the world. I start to break down what would need to happen for me to make an impact. And here are some examples. I might have a local presence, so people know where I am. I find a way of funding the work is obviously an important goal, and a plan and a system in place to roll out the support that they need to get out of poverty. So that would be the top line things, and I might have smaller goals within that. So, for example, the local presence one might break down again into learning the local language, building a relationship with local people by spending time out there, informing local authorities of my intent and sourcing local services, making a base for myself there. So you start to get the idea of what I'm trying to say here. It's breaking it down, but it starts with that dream, it starts with the why, and then it filters down from there. And it's very hard to do that and to see that when you're in the rat race. So the question is, how do you actually stick to this? It's one thing to say that, another thing to do it. I mean, especially if you're a one-man business, like you've got no one to delegate to, people, there's nobody there really to allow you to say no to things. So you do end up getting sucked into the rat race so easily. And this is where Emily comes in, just to explain maybe a few ways to highlight these wrong priorities. So ways of finding out what we're spending our time on, and then ways of producing that. So she's just going to pick up where I've left off, talking about time.
Cool. Thanks, Penny. Right. So productivity is also about working smarter, not necessarily about working harder, right? At Productivity Bureau, we usually advise our clients to go through a process of tracking their time over a period of a few weeks normally. Now, we analyse that data in all sorts of ways, but actually one of the key things that we learn from that is just how long you're spending on the various parts of your business. And we found that can be really illuminating. Clients are really often in denial about how long things actually take, and especially when something's kind of accumulating over a few weeks or perhaps through a month. And that's important because actually they might not be charging correctly for their product because of that. So you can do this exercise for yourself by noting down sort of starts and finish times as you switch between the tasks during the day. Better still, I'd advise you use an online tracker, which is essentially just an online stopwatch. And I've popped a couple of examples of free apps that you can use to do that up on the screen just there. So once you know where your time is going, you can take a really serious look at your processes. Now, if you've done that time tracking exercise, you're probably going to want to start maybe in areas where you're kind of using the most of your time. But you want to start breaking those areas down, those areas of work into sort of the tasks and the actions that you've got to do. So many of those tasks and actions probably need to be done in a particular order. And those chains of events have got a definite beginning, a middle, and an end. They're kind of like stories. And they're what's generally called your workflows. Chances are you'll probably have hundreds or thousands of these that you do just completely instinctively. You'll also have these primary workflows, which are like your stories. They're kind of like almost like a main narrative, but nestled underneath them, you're going to have a series of sort of secondary workflows, which for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to call tasks. So take, for example, a typical sales pipeline. Now, I've just highlighted here what might be a typical sort of sales process for, say, a web designer. I mean, even if this isn't your business, I'm assuming that at some point you have or you will commission web design services. So I'm hoping this sort of process is going to look broadly familiar to everybody viewing the webinar. Some of the items on this list are fairly involved in themselves. So look at information gathering up in the top right-hand corner, for example, or even agreeing terms down in the middle there. So I'm going to say nestled beneath those stories, you've got this kind of series of tasks. I'm going to be talking about them in a little bit more detail in a moment, but right now I want to introduce you to this mindset that I really, really want to encourage you to adopt when you're trying to improve your personal productivity and that of your business, which is that you want to be reducing the burden of some of those tasks, and at the same time, you want to be changing those big stories and try and reduce the number of steps in your process that involve you having to personally intervene. I'm going to talk you through how you can do that in your business by automating your workflow, using technology, and also using other ways to replicate tasks and really to sort of reduce your head clutter and make your business easier and hopefully more fun to run. So let's take a look again at this sales process in a little bit more detail this time. So each element of this sales workflow is probably a set of tasks on its own. So take, for example, information gathering. Now, for our web designer, your information gathering might have a workflow that looks something like this. Step 2 in the process, as you can see highlighted there, is broken down even further into a sort of a series of questions that you might want to be asking the client. So it's not exactly groundbreaking or earth-shattering to suggest that you might want to introduce a form that you send to the client to fill in and maybe answer some of those questions. But you probably want to take the same principle and apply it to the first and the last step, the analysis of the client's website and your competitor analysis. By creating a form for yourself to fill in or a template, you're going to give yourself benefits by, first of all, that's going to keep your focus when you're doing that piece of research. It's going to stop you potentially, disappearing down an internet rabbit hole and sort of, losing yourself and getting distracted and wasting time. And secondly, it's also going to make sure that you've gathered the information that you need every single time. Standardizing that process is going to make it easier to present your findings to your client. It's also, if you've done it cleverly, when you present it, it's also already going to be formatted. And the reason I'm talking about that is because, hey, forms and templates are tedious and boring, but absolutely necessary. I can't think of a single business that doesn't involve, that doesn't have something like that somewhere along the line, or probably at its core. And the second thing about that is that it's also one of the most basic forms of what's known as automation, which is something I'm going to be talking about in a little bit more detail in a minute. So mapping out your workflows doesn't need to take that long, by the way. I mean, I do some of my best thinking on this, with a biro and a pad of paper, and getting to the solutions sometimes takes a little while. But actually, you're just as likely to have your eureka moment when you're out for a walk, or you're in the shower, or you're doing the washing up. But looking at your work and breaking it down in this way is also going to really help you see more clearly where you can employ technology to help you and make those workflows easier to manage. Like you might, for example, set up this client form that I was just talking about. You might, for example, want to set that up online. You can get an automatic notification when the client fills it in, or you can set it up so they get an automatic prompt if it takes too long for them to fill it in. Equally, it could be the data can be automatically entered into a spreadsheet or some other kind of database process so that it's all ready for you to process when you come back to it. I'm going to give you an example now of how you can really use technology to kind of fundamentally change the way that you work as well. As Penny said, you've probably read or you've heard stuff about productivity that recommends that you delegate as much as possible. that's really sound advice. But I'm going to assume that if you're listening to this, it's probably because you don't have anyone to delegate to, especially in the early stages. Like, you are your business, right? And I wanted to get you to think about actually what tasks can you delegate to technology? Take, for example, something like your diary management. Now, I'm guessing we're all familiar with the challenges of trying to organize a meeting when both people have got really, really busy diaries. And a typical process for organizing a meeting might look something like the process that I've got on the slide here. Now, more and more, it's not necessarily the most efficient way to do it, but the most accepted way to do this is actually by email. So especially if both parties are not on top of their inboxes, this part, the sending stuff to, sending the dates out and agreeing the dates, can cycle around pretty much indefinitely. That was the case with someone that I worked with recently as a VA. Her inbox was absolutely bulging, and important contacts were emailing her, suggesting a meeting or having a call. She'd wrote back, she'd email them back and suggest some times. They'd email her back, suggest some more times. The email would get buried, and by the time she got back to it, often those suggested times had passed. So she'd start all over again. And imagine that with, 9, 10 contacts on the go at any given time. It was pretty chaotic. So she delegated that task to me as her virtual assistant, which helped, of course. But actually, that was a relatively expensive solution for her. Later on, she trialed a You Can Book Me account. Now, when she wants someone to, when someone wants to meet or have a call, she just sends them an email with a link that lets them choose and book from her available time. It syncs with her diary. All that email and phone back and forth trying to find dates pretty much eliminated. It reduced the hours that I was spending on her diary virtually overnight and saved her roughly £100 a month. Now, I appreciate not everyone has a VA that's doing this kind of work for them, but you want to think about it in terms of how much your time is worth to your business, and it's probably more than that. So now, her diary workflows like that. Much more simplified, much more reliable, much faster, and actually more professional. So, if you're thinking strategically about your workflows, it's possible to make really, really big wins and really, really big, story changes and really big wins in terms of the time and effort you're putting into you're putting into particular workflows. And that, in a nutshell, is automation. There are lots of examples kind of like this, that, there are thousands of apps out there that can help you change and simplify the way that you work. I'd encourage you to go out, look for them. If you're really, really clever, there are all kinds of ways that, you can get your apps to talk to each other, and, you can trigger whole chains of events just with a single action from you. I'm super, super geeky about this, and I still find stuff like all the time that kind of gets me excited. So, what works for you might not work for somebody else, but, there's plenty out there to be found. When you're looking at new technologies, though, I want to stress again how important it is that you really do understand your workflows. First of all, that's going to make it much, much easier for you to identify and understand the problem that you're trying to solve. It's also going to help you, it's going to help you avoid getting carried away with that brilliant, shiny new tool that somebody else has recommended for you, but that actually isn't really that good a fit. If you understand and you can understand and you can visualize the logic of every single one of your processes, it's also going to help you identify really clearly which bits can be done by the machines and which bits really, really, really need human intervention. And also this visualization of your workflows also, for me, it's prompted me to go and look for solutions for myself and for my clients that actually I might never necessarily have thought of. It's guided me towards particular, specifics or search terms and things, and found great tools that actually I might otherwise never have known existed. I'm going to add another little aside here as well, which is sometimes you need to be open to spending a little bit of money to save a lot of time. I know the instinct when you're looking for new apps is to find something free. That's perfectly understandable. We've all got we want to keep our overheads down. We've all got an eye on our margins. There's loads available for free. There are plenty of apps also that will let you get started for free, and that will give you, that will only charge you kind of as you scale. Obviously, you want to keep future costs in mind when you're forming a kind of dependent relationship on another app. But I really want to encourage you to being open to sort of spending a bit of money to save more. Bear with me a minute. Sorry about that. Right. Yes, I'm going to be open to spending a little bit of money to save maybe quite a lot more. You can book me, cost I think £7 a month for my client, which was a fraction of what she was spending on a VA to do the same job. And it was an even smaller fraction, I think, of what she was potentially losing because she was when she was managing it herself. In terms of those lost opportunities, clients that got sick of waiting for her and went elsewhere. If you've done the time tracking, especially, you're going to be able to make really accurate judgments too about what that return on investment is. And hey, it's good for the world. Developers need to eat too, right? So this principle, and pretty much everything that I've talked about actually this evening, doesn't just apply to new apps and whizzy bits of technology. Penny and I were talking the other day about a client that she worked with, I think a while before the Productivity Bureau, but they were spending a lot of time packaging their products up. They looked tying dainty ribbons, faffing about with cellophane. They looked beautiful, they looked quality, they looked amazing, but they took ages, and it was a huge drain on their human resources. So they realized there was a problem, and they eventually managed to resolve that by buying some bespoke but much easier to assemble boxes. So they might have cost more to purchase up front, but actually they paid for themselves many times over in terms of the time saved. So working on streamlining your tasks is where you're likely going to be making some incremental changes, which, saving relatively small amounts of time. It might sometimes feel like you're not making that much of a difference, but believe me, it really does add up. And I think just as importantly, standardizing those processes kind of reduces the mental burden of running your business. It takes the decision making out of some of those day-to-day tasks. It reduces the number of things that you have to remember. It's going to help you plan your workload a lot better. All of these things, are things which contribute to stress and being overwhelmed. So you want to kind of save your brain for the stuff where it really, really matters. Improving things at that kind of, what I'd call the story level, might be where you make a big win. You'll have relatively few of those, but they may come. If you understand your tasks really thoroughly, then you've got a better chance of finding those transformative apps because you understand exactly the problem. You've visualized the problem that you're trying to solve, and you're going to have a much better grasp of what parts of your work really need to be done by human beings and where you can introduce that automation into your life, into your business.
And we, just to interrupt, sorry, we find that this is so hard with our clients because often it's that thing of being like, well, so what you're asking me to do is to step back, spend time thinking about how I break down my tasks and my workflows, and then finding ways to automate those. And you'd agree as well, I'm sure, Emily, that this is a real hard phase in our 360 program. We kind of go da-da, and we present the ways for the client to automate. And they just need so much convincing at that phase that it's a good investment of time, not just of money, but of time as well. And here's where I was kind of think about that clip from The Simpsons where Homer says, that's a problem for future Homer. Man, I'm glad I'm not that guy. He tries to eat or drink something really stupid. Like, future you will thank you for putting in this time now. It's, time you spend doing your time audit, all that stuff, you'll start to see that what the hours are actually worth, and then you can estimate how much time you'll save through the effort of assessing. Not just, it's not just about necessarily the margins, how they're hit by the cost of that, but just the cost of you spending the time to set it up is still worth it. You could be paying yourself back in 3 months' time just on the job that you've been doing over and over again, because you think, I just need to do it, rather than stop and think about the assessing the time. It's very easy to put this stuff off, but Brian Tracy calls this your live frog, after the Mark Twain quote: if you eat a live frog every morning, nothing worse will happen to you for the rest of the day. So you just got to get on and do it, and your future self will thank you.
I also want to add, actually, that one of the things about the workflow approach as well is that you don't necessarily have to, you don't have to do it for your whole business all at once. You can do it bit by bit. You can get those incremental benefits by just setting aside a little bit of time just to, quickly map out that workflow. And like I said, sometimes actually some of the solutions come to you because they're running in the background, just because you've seen and you visualize that workflow. I do, and I think, we both appreciate and acknowledge that, some of the things that we've described do involve time investment. And taking a step back to really assess the situation and think some of this through is difficult, especially, say, when you're feeling like you're at capacity and you're just fighting just to keep your head above water. That's why we set up the Productivity Bureau. We do that step back for you. So we do the thinking. We can equip you with a fully personalized set of actions you can take to immediately sort of change the way that you're working for the better and make your business more profitable and hopefully easier to run. I'm not going to switch on the hard sell, but as Penny said, if you invest, investment in our 360 program can be paid back actually in a matter of months. So, if you need some help to make every hour in your business count, then we'd love to work for you. And I think Penny's going to just introduce a little offer that we've put together for the people who are on the webinar today.
Yeah, great. So just for the people who sign up today, anyone watching this, it's a bit. We wanted to do an exclusive for the guys at Entrepreneursary and this network, because we're really excited to be part of this. Thank you, Dahlia, for inviting us to do this. We always do an initial coaching and consultation session, which is run by myself just to consult for the 360 program. It's normally £250. We're offering it £150. I can share the link for that specific sign up below. So the £150 would cover a 1 hour long coaching session with me, where we go through kind of a personality assessment and current ways of working, assessing your methods and your business productivity at its current stage. And at the end, you come out with a basic personal actionable plan, and we use this session to assess whether your turnover and the inefficiencies in your business warrant being put forward for our 360 program. If it doesn't, then that cost also includes like a follow-up session a month afterwards to see how you're progressing with your personal goals. So, that is still in and of itself a really useful thing to be doing. And before the Productivity Bureau was set up by me and Emily, that was what I was offering my clients on a service. And I've got some amazing quotes from on our website about people who found that really useful. The normal cost of our 360 program is £900, but if you're put forward after the coaching session, then it's discounted to £650. And this program covers many of the things we've talked about today, to be honest: the time audit, the detailed business efficiency assessment, and then a bespoke report, which normally focuses on about 3 to 4 areas of improvement through automation, and finally a few how-to video guides that Emily puts together to get you started on your road to efficiency, basically. It normally is about a 12 to 14 week program with several touch points from us along the way. But, you know, as I said before, this would be just a great stage to coach you guys one-to-one, anyone listening to this. So, you know, if you sign up using this, then you can get that discount. So yeah, that's really where we're at. That's how we want to start this, because obviously without assessing, you know, where you're at in your business at the moment, it may not be that you want to go forward with the 360 program that we have to offer. But yeah, so thanks, Dalia. I can see that some people have already written, Dalia's written a couple of questions, but yeah, now is the time to send questions in the chat format. Dalia's written, are there any programs or websites you can recommend for the workflow management? And
I think that's probably one for me, isn't it?
Yeah, or forms?
So it depends what you mean by workflow management, I think. So, I mean, honestly, I would recommend actually working out on paper what your processes are. There are technologies that can help with that. It very much depends on how you work. So some people like to, I mean, you know, there are sort of project management apps and team working apps like, you know, like Trello, which are very easy and very visual ways to see what you've got, what you've got on, and what you're kind of working on, and what your goals are. Other people prefer to put all of that into something like a what's called a CRM, which you know, is a customer relations management software. But actually, within most of those, they've got kind of project management functions and prompts and things like that you can set that kind of all, you know, authorize, you know, will automatically remind you or get you kind of thing, which again, you can link up to different apps. So, you know, there's lots out there. It really, really depends on how you work and how your business is structured and sort of what kind of a person you are. But yeah, I would get started, you know, seriously would just get started with actually just trying to put down on paper, actually really, really understand what your workflows are. And then you can sort of search from there for things that are going to work for you. What was the other question about? Sorry, yeah, what was the other question about forms?
Yeah, or forms, but just I think Aina here is just commenting on the how many there are to choose from. It's so true. I think one thing that is shared often amongst all service agencies or services offered is the kind of sales process. So one thing that I've been using with my husband's business, he's a branding and graphic designer, and something that we recommended to a client as well recently was Capsule CRM.
Yeah.
So that has been really useful because it's kind of got two sides to it, in the sense that you use it for like setting up sales opportunities and going through the kind of task by task. How do you go from literally that first conversation to signing on the dotted line? And it's a really good automated system for tracking everything. And then you also have another section of the app which is useful for just literally keeping track of projects and what your tasks are. It's particularly useful if you've got a couple of people that are contracting for you. We found it very handy.
Yeah, and keeping track of data about a client or a person over the long term as well. That they're really great. You know, it's really great for that. But like I say, it depends. You know, sometimes that sort of sales funnel approach won't necessarily suit you and your business. So it is a little bit of, you know, you do have to kind of try it and sometimes try it and see what's going to work for you. Just on forms, well, before I lose that question, there are quite a few things on the market that you can use to put, you know, forms online really quickly. One of the easiest ones is Google Forms. I use that quite a lot, just so it's very quick. Typeform is another one. There's a free version of that. If you want to set up something simple which looks, which looks beautiful, Typeform is really good, but it's kind of limited in its function, a bit limited in its functionality in terms of the free version. But if it's something you're going to use a lot, it's possibly worth it. I've been playing with Wufoo as well, so they're all really good. All really, really good products depending on exactly what it is you want to achieve.
What was that one?
Wufoo? Yeah, Wufoo.
That one. You type that one.
Are you what? Okay, I think. Oh, hang on. I think it's Wufoo. Do you know what? I can't. Wufoo? Something like that. Okay. It might have a double O. Actually, I honestly can't remember. Okay, what else have we got? Have we got any more coming through? Oh yeah, the visual. If you're a very visual person, Dalia, I know you've mentioned this, is that some of the things like Trello, and I think Asana is the other one as well. The things with the set you up lovely kind of layout with what they call cards, and it's basically a board, an online notice board where you can move tasks around and schedule them and things like that. Very, very pretty, nice colours. It's really, really nice. And a lot of people swear by it. Other people cannot get on with it at all. It's to an extent, it's going to be down to your personality and your way of working and your personal preference.
Yeah, and I find, and to be honest, I'm always going to go back to this because I'm the less geeky of the two of us. But I find that we're really getting a comeback as well for the book, the agenda, and there's some absolutely beautiful types of. I mean, you can spend literally loads of money on these lovely leather-bound diaries, which are kind of a bit pointless because they only last a year. But I find myself that however many systems I have online, when it gets down to the day-to-day, and I'm not really talking about so much the bigger picture goal setting and all of that kind of stuff, but the diary is really useful, the lists is really useful, and that's how I find it. I'm a visual person too, and it's nice to hear from you, Aina. And I just spotted that you've said that you're going to have to leave, so it was really nice to have you on board. Take care. Bye.
Cool. So I think we're all out of. Are we all out of questions?
I think so.
Okay. So I guess, Dalia, if you're happy, should we wrap up? Have we lost you?